right, hey everybody, welcome back to the Profit Roadmap. As always, we're your hosts, Ryan and Becca, and this is the premier podcast created for field service pros to help you grow your business, stay on top of your latest trends, and help you provide even more value to the communities that you serve. Now, today we're super excited to welcome two experts from Mediagistic. We're welcoming back Eddie Childs, Director of Corporate Marketing, and then we're also super excited to welcome Michelle Caston, Director of Media Planning and Buying. Now, in this episode, the plan is that we're going to talk a little bit about standing out in the marketplace, brand storytelling. We'll probably talk about other stuff, whatnot, just naturally comes up. But Eddie, Michelle, thank you guys so much for jumping onto the Profit Roadmap. How are you guys doing today?
Doing great. Yeah. We do have a hurricane rolling in, but it is expected to miss Tampa, so we're all pretty happy about that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm down in Fort Myers. I'm right there with you. Yeah. We're all very thankful. We'll let the Panhandle have this one.
Thoughts and prayers for the people in the Panhandle for sure.
Absolutely. We take it seriously, but we try not to, put the target on our backs if we can. All right, so let's dive into it, guys. Eddie, let's start with you. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are with Mediagistic today?
Yeah, sure. I'm the Director of Corporate Marketing here at Mediagistic. I've been here for going on 10 years. I started with Mediagistic working in copywriting, social media, demand generation marketing, you name it, email marketing, inbound marketing. That's kind of been my role here. And throughout the 10 years, I've expanded into other things such as working directly with our clients in a consultative capacity and helping them with, shape their digital strategies and sort of how their marketing should play out from a performance standpoint.
Beautiful. And Michelle, how about you? How did you get started with Mediagistic?
Mediagistic about 14 years ago when I moved to Tampa from Miami. Previously, I've always been in agencies for the most part. I have about 18 years experience as a media planner buyer, and I have like a couple months experience on the client side where I worked with Ashley Furniture and got to manage their planners, their agencies and their buying agencies. And ultimately, I definitely prefer the agency side where I can work with small businesses on their media planning and buying campaigns, making sure that they're either on their own doing as much as they can with the budgets provided, making sure that they have brand awareness in their specific markets, and then also focusing on how the national campaigns spill into their markets and how we can use that information. So currently, I'm the media director or director of media planning and buying at Mediagistic, and I lead a small team, but we're mighty and we handle all of the media planning and buying on the mass media traditional side.
That's killer. That is awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, well, super glad to have both of you guys here. There's so much knowledge and expertise between the two of you guys. So let's dive into it. So Eddie, Michelle, let's start with standing out in a crowded market. So what, as far as you guys are concerned, are the secrets to helping businesses really pop at the local level?
Yeah, let me, I'll field this one from kind of just a basic standpoint. I mean, the first thing I would say is wrap your trucks. You know what I mean? We work with a lot of clients and they want to invest in billboards and their trucks aren't wrapped. And a truck is essentially a rolling billboard. So I would say, if we're talking basic tactical stuff, get a really good truck wrap that's really visually appealing and really speaks to your brand style. And that's just one of the first things that I would point out. But then beyond that, offer an exceptional customer experience. If you're looking to really hack the whole word of mouth / Google reviews puzzle and get found in the local map pack and like show up on those searches in Google Maps, if you offer an exceptional customer experience and really pay attention to what is that like for the end consumer, you're going to do better in those avenues. And then ultimately, I would say develop a value-based sales narrative. At the end of the day, customers don't care about HVAC, but they do care about a lot of different things that are very adjacent to HVAC. So finding that value-based brand story and sales narrative and using it to permeate every aspect of your marketing, that's going to help them stand out in the market. And I know Michelle also has a lot of thoughts coming from the media end as well.
Yeah, I'd say keeping your message consistent. will definitely help you stay pop and stay relevant in the local scene, making sure your brand image is consistent, whether you're doing broadcast radio, that sound, having your tagline in there, or if you have a connected TV spot, video, that the logos are the same from the truck to the video, just making sure that whatever efforts you have going on in the local market, they are consistent so that you can remain memorable for clients, because with the nature of HVAC, they don't need you till they need you. So making sure that they know you before you need you is the name of the game. So being consistent so that you can remain memorable is definitely a way to make sure that you pop on the local scene.
Awesome. Yeah, those are both great things. It wasn't until recently did I ever think about the design effort that goes into wrapping a truck. Is that something that you guys help do the design work, or is that?
Yeah, we're a full service agency. So we can help with any aspect of our clients' marketing, including their visual identity. So like the look and feel of their brand, and then how that's expressed, from basically any element of graphic design from their website to physical collateral to getting their trucks wrapped. So that's definitely something that we do help our clients with for sure.
Absolutely. And when you guys have new clients come on, is it often, Michelle, that you guys see people that have really inconsistent brand identity in different mediums?
Yeah. It's pretty often. Unfortunately, we do have situations where they'll have a TV spot that will look one way, and then people will go to the website and you can't really connect the brands outside of the name of the company. So just making sure the imagery is consistent across everything that you're doing is really, really important. And it makes more of an impact because your ads will work harder for you, and your local brand will be more memorable and familiar with you. So
it's not uncommon, just to add to that we'll start working with a brand and then realize they maybe have 3 or 4 different variations of their logo, just as an example, and they're not being consistent about how they're using it. So a good example is maybe one partner in the brand has had one logo developed and the other one sort of felt like the brand needed a facelift. So they're using the logo, the different logo with some of the vendors they're working with, while the other partner is kind of using the old logo, or maybe, the office manager isn't necessarily in the loop and they're using an old logo and passing it along. When you're not working necessarily with like one vendor to kind of coordinate it all for them, you're kind of coordinating a lot of different vendors, which I know is a common problem, particularly in the HVAC and home services space, and that can cause a lot of friction, particularly if you're working with someone who's not necessarily a full-time marketer on your staff, and they're kind of passing those assets along to the vendors and hoping that they'll figure out how to handle them. And it's also possible that a vendor might have an old logo on file or something, and then they're using that old logo or that old creative when you have updated creative, and maybe either they lost it or they didn't realize it existed or something like that. So there's really a lot of friction that comes from having to coordinate a lot of different, providers when it comes to your marketing presence. So that can be a reason that happens,
Makes me think about the psychology of marketing a bit that goes into all of this, and how consumers remember things and put things together. So when you're working with your clients, that's something you have to take into account, as the demographics of where they are, their clientele, all those kinds of things.
Yeah. And, there's the old marketing rule of 7, right? It takes something like 7 exposures to a brand before you really recognize it and are willing to do business with it. Now, if we're talking in home services, that can be extremely shortened in a time of need when the consumer's undergoing a distressed buying decision. But if they recognize your brand, you've accomplished your job of creating awareness of the brand before the time of need ever occurs. That continuity between all those 7 touches is what pays off, and sometimes can mean the difference between when a consumer is going to click on one company in search results or the one underneath it. Well, they're going to click on the one they know. That's the big differentiator. It's just like when you walk up to a vending machine. One of our VPs here loves this metaphor, but you walk up to a vending machine. If it's full of off-brand sodas and there's one soda in that vending machine that you're probably going to gravitate toward that one and not all the off-brand sodas, right? Because you know it, you're familiar with it, and it can win the click and win that business ultimately,
Yeah, that's a good point when it comes to unifying the brand across all your mediums. Because if you essentially have like 2 or 3 different variations of your logo out there, right? Well, now they don't need to see you 7 times. They need to see you 14, 21 times. See
Right.
if my math is right. We'll see how I didn't do a great math class.
But to add to that, I mean, think about how many companies in this space are similarly named anyway, right? So when they see
Yep,
that
that's
different
so
logo,
true.
they might actually even think it's a different brand with a similar name, because the consumer has experienced this enough with home services brands to realize that there are a lot of similarly named providers in the marketplace. So if you're missing that continuity, they might think that they're looking at a marketing communication from an entirely different brand.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. When it comes to HVAC business names, I'm pretty sure I could go anywhere in the country and find something with polar in the name.
Yeah, polar bear, Arctic,
Yeah.
custom. I'm not trying to throw shade at anybody who actually has one of those names, because you
Yeah.
can overcome that.
They're great names.
Yeah, and they make a lot of sense, but you can overcome that through strong branding, imagery, again, truck wraps, uniforms, great logo, really cool brand colors, and being able to tell that story is just so important. So, even if you do have a name that's common for the industry, if you're able to kind of hit on those other pieces, you can still differentiate yourself.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about that, right? So standing out in your market plays a pretty significant role in lead generation. So what are some clever tricks that you guys have seen businesses use to keep that pipeline flowing without breaking the bank?
Yeah, so lead gen, I as a longtime lead gen marketer who's worked in performance marketing, I think we over-indexed on lead gen pretty early on here in the last decade. So in other words, we really leaned into the concept of you need to put your dollars into only things that are going to produce leads, right? And so what we ended up doing was we encourage people to only go transactional with their customers. And at the end of the day, that turns off as soon as your marketing dollars turn off, right? So being able to supplement that by building a strong brand, you start to kind of get to a point where your SEO actually performs better, right? Because Google cares not only about your keywords, but about other indicators that people know your brand, they like it, they want to engage with it, that maybe aren't as easy to put into like an analytics dashboard.
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of that, we've seen that by using stronger branding, you actually start to get more traffic to your branded keywords when you're doing paid search campaigns. Why does that matter? Well, branded keywords cost about 10% to even less. They cost pennies on the dollar versus short-term unbranded keywords. So if you're able to create, again, more awareness before the time of need and drive more awareness of that brand when the time of need occurs, to where somebody actually plugs in a search for your name, you're kind of doing what you're supposed to do from a marketing and sales standpoint, because you're driving more demand for your services and business at a fraction of the cost. I mean, there's other ways to go about this. I would say I have seen companies convert their CSRs into doing outbound sales motions, which is kind of like non-intuitive for this industry. So following up on things like, hey, we see your water heater is about to be out of warranty, or your last service call was, a year ago. Being able to do those outbound motions in a way that really removes friction for the consumer and can create more at-bats for your sales team, which is, it's more of a conventional outbound sales strategy. We're seeing that's more and more effective, when paired with a real kind of like consumer database driven approach. And one more I'd point out to you is using lead gen channels like Facebook lead ads, Meta lead ads is a strong play, or even Yelp. Yelp leads, those are strong channels right now. The big difference between, well, Yelp has a lot of consumer intent because consumers in certain markets actually go to Yelp and will perform searches and look for providers to work with there, depending on the market. So some markets are much more successful at this than others based on how often users are actually going to Yelp and doing this. So like strong plays would be California, New York. I think the last time I looked at it, Florida, Washington, and a few others are just really strong plays. But I would look at that before you invest in that. And then meta lead ads are a strong play because you're actually getting into social media channels where consumers spend about 33% of their time. You're articulating an offer around, I don't know, rebates or some kind of like something that creates sort of a sense of urgency in the consumer, and getting them to fill out a form as opposed to just going to your website and maybe or maybe not converting on a landing page. You're actually filling out a form. The big problem is you have to align a sales motion around that. You can't treat those leads like you do, I don't know, a lead through your website where the consumer's coming to you, they're in a time of need. Well, if you call them back and you say, hey, when can we schedule your appointment? You're going to lose the lead, or if you wait too long, you don't call them back in the next hour of them submitting that lead form, you're also going to lose that lead. So, I would say looking for those opportunities that are not Google opportunities. I mean, everybody with 5 trucks or more are probably running paid search and doing Google local services ads. I would say those are very important. Don't stop doing those because those are kind of your bread and butter, but start looking for opportunities beyond that to get your brand out there in a way that the consumer is going to interact with your brand and raise their hand and say, hey, I want to do business with you. And those are some different ways. And there's a lot of others, but those are kind of the ones that we're seeing to be pretty effective. That last one, the meta lead ads, though, I would just caution anyone who's going to do it is that those are harder leads to convert. You actually have to engage in some degree of salesmanship when you're calling back the consumer in order to turn that lead into a revenue, or you're not really, using your money in a really productive way. So, that's kind of a personnel thing. If you're able to do it, I would recommend doing it. If not, I would consider looking at some of those other tactics I just described.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and to piggyback on it a little bit, even though my world is brand awareness, so we're not necessarily lead gen, but I just like to reiterate the whole point of just not stopping your branding. We've had a lot of clients that maybe need to cut back on budget, they need to shift funds around, and oftentimes the first on the chopping block is their brand awareness tools, just because they're harder to attribute to leads. So they do play a major role in driving down those, getting leads for lower costs, just because the market knows you, your brand has been out there, you're not new, and people can forget, they say out of sight, out of mind. So just don't stop the branding. Even if you scale it back, that's one thing, but some people completely cut it off. And then try to replace it with lead gen, and all it does is make you have to work harder on that lead gen and stuff.
Yeah, you're building a long-term asset for your business, right? If you're creating awareness in the consumer's mind, there's a media half-life that'll sort of stay there and resonate with the consumer long after those ads have run. Whereas, transactional lead gen sort of has a shelf life, right? As soon as you turn those ads or marketing motions off, you can really turn things off from a business standpoint. I guess one last thing before we move on, marketing automation is so key, actually using your database, and maybe we can come back to that in a few minutes to really dig into that. But using your database is one of the key ways that once a consumer has entered your ecosystem and has started doing business with you, I've seen one of the big mistakes I've seen business owners make is they think that that's their consumer for life, their customer for life. Well, the big problem is that, yeah, they're in your database, but the very next time they experience a time of need, arguably, unless they have a maintenance plan, they're still going to call every provider in the Google Map pack, and the first one to pick up and, schedule an appointment and get roll a truck out to their house. They're the one who wins, So I know you might have your sticker on their air conditioner. You might even have installed it. If you're not doing database driven marketing motions to keep your consumer in your ecosystem, and sell them things like maintenance plans and send them reminders that they need a tune up or whatever, they're not your consumer for life. You have to earn that, and you have to continually earn that. You have to continually win their business. And so there is a thing called lifetime value of a customer, that your CLV, your customer lifetime value, using that marketing automation piece to drive those transactions beyond just that initial transaction, so that you've done business with that consumer not just once, but 2, 3, 4, 5 times. That's really another way to drive leads that I don't know a lot of home service providers are actually looking at.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, you're 100% right. I mean, 3 of the 4 of us are in Florida. And Becca, you're out in Texas, so you understand. Like, when your AC goes out, like, whoever gets there the fastest is the one who owns the business. So, like,
absolutely.
Absolutely. But maintenance plans, you brought up a good thing. Get your customers on maintenance plans. They're super sticky and awesome and great, and I'm a big proponent of them. So, I do want to come back to marketing automations, but I did want to talk a little bit about when you're building your brand as a smaller business. Michelle, I'm gonna ask this question to you first. What are some of the pitfalls that you find businesses fall into when they are starting to build that brand for the first time?
I'd say maybe trying to stretch themselves too thin when they're starting out. A lot of times you may not have larger budgets. You're a fairly new business, and so trying to kind of be in all places at once and having the effect of like the drop in the bucket is something that we've kind of seen happen. We usually recommend that they kind of concentrate, dominate in a specific area. So once we've done the research to figure out, who are you targeting? What's your geography look like? Are we looking at 5 zip codes, 5 counties? We narrow it down to figure out which media channel makes the most sense for them, typically based on their geography. And then we add the layer of targeting. So I'd say just not being scared to kind of start in one space and dominate it, even if it's one radio station that you're on every day at 3 p.m. Just something that you can consistently build a frequency with a particular audience and then grow from there. So yeah, that would pretty much be it. Don't stretch yourself too thin. It's really okay to have a solid focus and then grow from there.
I think that's really great advice. The most common thing I hear when it comes to branding is people are like, just be everywhere. But you can't be everywhere without first being somewhere else. It doesn't happen overnight. So that's awesome. I love that.
Also, earlier when you were talking about branding and people cutting back when it comes to like finances and budget, branding is one of the first things. Like, what are some of the low cost things that you can be consistent? What things can people do or field service businesses do that are low cost but effective?
Well, once you get into my world, I handle most of like the streaming components, so digital radio, podcasts, connected TV, streaming television. I'd say any of those digital options would be a safe place to kind of coast for a while. As long as your targeting is very, very specific, I would definitely take it down to zip codes, probably not counties. You're looking at homeowners, household income, 100K plus, depending on your neighborhoods that you're targeting. I would definitely focus on those digital components that allow you to still reach those masses at a local level, at a zip code level with zero waste. They can make the choice on their devices, or sorry, not devices, but they can make a choice on their units because they are homeowners. So we've kind of filtered out all of the people that do not qualify and just focus on those qualified people within those service areas.
Yeah. And then additionally, I would say meta video views ads can get you a lot of bang for your buck from a CPM standpoint. Like, you're paying pennies on the dollar to get those views on your creative. The Google demand gen ads are very powerful for a similar reason, and YouTube is very, very powerful for that. You can get a lot of visibility and eyes on your brand and your brand message just by running those 3 channels. And there's even a way to run YouTube ads that are non-skippable, and or ones where if the consumer does decide to skip on your ad, you basically don't pay for it and you get like a free view on your ads. So those are all pretty powerful. And then there's another one called Google Performance Max Ads that sort of mix lead gen and branding ads and Google's display networks and YouTube, and kind of puts everything into one bucket. And you can get a lot of bang for your buck there and still produce some leads out of it. So those would be some other channels that I would look at as well.
Those are super cool. When it comes to the marketing streams, specifically in the digital realm, around like social media, something that, this is anecdotal, and so in my own experience, I don't see a lot of like field service businesses, whether it's HVAC, plumbing, electrical, or even the lawn care side, or house cleaning and stuff like that. Like short form media, I don't see a lot of them doing that, in my personal opinion. But like those are some of my favorite things to watch. Is that something that you guys push your clients to? Like, I'll give the quick example of like on like scrolling TikTok or like YouTube Shorts or something like that. Like there's a guy who goes around and like just like cleans up a lawn for free, and he'll get millions of views. And yeah, I love watching those. So like, is that something that you guys talk to your clients about?
Yeah, those are well, that's a really good question, Ryan. Short form video is one of the strongest plays out there for social media to create awareness for your brand and get in front of consumers. I have a couple thoughts here. The first is, if we're talking about the hierarchy of needs, sort of, it's what's good for your investment, what's easy to execute as a brand. So in some cases, if we connect with a business owner who's got a great personality, they're a great performer, they have a good on-camera presence, we would kind of encourage them to look for those kinds of organic opportunities. It really kind of depends on which business I'm talking to, whether I would encourage them to do that or not. Because it's like, there's also, painfully awkward sort of videos out there, we would probably encourage them to stay away from. So yeah, there's definitely opportunities. I personally have worked with particularly a couple guys out on the West Coast who are fantastic at short form video creation, where they're almost influencers themselves, and we work with them on concepts and storyboards and scripts, and we can help them source video crews and things like that, in order to make the most of that and put together a social media plan that will really allow them to capitalize that. But we also work with a lot of owners who are maybe legacy owners. Maybe they're a little further along in their careers and not so comfortable in front of a camera, and they may or may not have techs that are able to do that as well. So the ability to put that kind of narrative kind of into the market really kind of varies business by business. But yeah, if they have those kinds of aspirations for their brand, it is a strong play to do that sort of thing, for sure. And I guess two places that works really well. Instagram Reels is very, very short form video oriented, and can be very, it can be very receptive to influencer type content. And then obviously TikTok is very, very powerful for that. TikTok also, it's probably significant to note, is moving towards longer form content, which is crazy because everybody started moving towards shorter form content because of TikTok, but now TikTok's moving towards longer form content, while YouTube is, running shorts and stories. So it's sort of like everybody's trying to like grab a little piece of each other's pie. Yeah. And so they're all sort of like mixing the format of their respective social media platforms to try and get everybody else's piece. But developing short form video is very, very consumable and bite sized. There are other ways to do it where you're not necessarily doing influencer style stuff. I would encourage brands that aren't necessarily interested in doing influencer style stuff to still think about, well, how can you educate your consumer in a way that they're going to become more knowledgeable, not just about your services, but about, I don't know, a video about, pouring bleach down the little PVC pipe, that can help to educate the consumer and teach them how to maintain their own equipment, and that creates value, that educates them, and can get them started on your buyer's journey with your brand.
Absolutely. So that's something that I'm a big fan of. Is, I don't know if this is the appropriate term for it, but essentially like educational marketing, where you kind of give it away for free up front, and then you sort of cement yourself as this authority, and then like realistically, you're gonna weed out all the people that weren't gonna call you anyway. If they're gonna do their DIY thing, they were gonna do that anyway, and then maybe when they mess it up, they'll call you because you tried to help them in the first place. And then the other ones will be like, I'm just gonna call you because this is complicated.
Sure. Frankly, if they're not an influencer type and they're not really comfortable being on camera, there's other ways to work around that creatively, right? We have a really powerful, really good creative department. Maybe that's a different topic for a different podcast that we could do, but you can use animated video to tell that story, or you could go so far as to hire actors, and that's something we specialize in. We can put storyboards together and get animators or actors out there to help do that for you and your brand. But I would say start with, again, when we're talking about like value-based sales narratives, like think about what the consumer cares about, because every time you do business with a consumer, there's a value exchange, right? So if you're able to offer more value during that buyer's journey, they're going to trust you more, they're going to see you as an authority, and they're going to be more likely to do business with you at the end of the day.
Would you say that that's the key to cutting through all the noise that you see on social media, like TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, is because there is so much competition and noise out there on these platforms? So is that one of the ways to stand out amongst all the noise, is like be consistent with the value you're offering?
Yeah, I think there's two ways. You can be funny, which is hard. It's really hard to be funny consistently. We have this saying, and we have this saying in performance marketing that viral is not a strategy. So, if we want to go back quickly to mistakes that we see people make, thinking that they can build their business around viral is a big mistake, because you're basically counting on hitting the lottery, every time. Some people are very good at viral marketing, but I wouldn't try to build an empire on it, so where I would really look at doing is, humor is a good way to do it, but I think with the intent of educating and providing value to the consumer, if that's your intent, rather than just trying to get a transaction from them, then you're kind of onto something, right? You're engaging in a dialogue with the consumer in a way that's not just about, I have a service, buy my service. You know what I mean? You're showcasing your expertise, you're showcasing your authority, and you're really showing them something that, a differentiator as to why they should work with you,
Yeah, it's pretty cool too, because it's something that you can do that's very low cost. A lot of like startup companies, they're wondering like, what can we do that won't break the bank? And I know I default to kind of Eddie's thing where it's like blogs, just help the community, help the people out. You can go to ChatGPT, type in like HVAC homeowner pain points or something like that, and get like a list of content ideas and just start to create blogs and helpful tools and tips and tricks to maintain your own units, and make sure that when they visit, they're not trying to replace your unit. They can actually just do the tune-up like you need. So it's a great low-cost way to also stay relevant and help out your local community.
Absolutely. And I'm going to piggyback on that, because as someone who makes content for essentially a living, using ChatGPT to get ideas is something that will save you a lot of time. For me, it's a good way to get over like writer's block if I have to write something. Don't have ChatGPT like do it for you. Like you got to put the work in. But if you just want some ideas, some of the stuff it spits out is garbage. Some of it's really good, and then but it gets the gears turning, right? So don't be afraid to turn to that. Don't feel like you're like, I don't know. I feel like other content creators are like, you're taking the art out of it, or whatever. That's a whole debate. That's another podcast.
It's a big war with that.
We'll get into that. I mean, I have my own thoughts on like the AI, like art and music and all that stuff. You see my guitars behind me, so you probably know where I stand. But when it comes to like writing, when it comes to generating content, very, very valuable tool. I'm going to keep talking. So I want to shift it a little bit into brand storytelling. So how can service businesses spin a yarn that really resonates with their audience and sets them apart from their competition?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So in terms of setting themselves apart from a brand storytelling standpoint, I would say, really spend some time thinking about what differentiates your brand, right? And ask a lot of home services providers. And I think a lot of them will come back with similar answers. They'll say things like, I'm family owned, I'm local to the community, I'm veteran owned, I've been in business for 25 years, we're trustworthy, these are basically what everybody else is saying. You know what I mean? That's actually, if we want to go back to a mistake that often gets made, it's that thinking that the table stakes of the industry are differentiators is a big mistake. So what I would encourage home services businesses to really sit down and do is think about, what does the consumer actually care about, right? Like what are the things the consumer actually cares about? And I can tell you right now, they only care about 4 things when it comes to HVAC. They care about their homes, their families, their finances, and their time. That's all they care about. And so think about what they care about and connect HVAC and your brand and your approach to HVAC to those 4 things. And if you do that, I believe you have the beginning of what really can set your brand apart and start you down the road of brand storytelling. Now, there's these long tried and true tactics of, don't talk about yourself, talk about your audience, right? Think about their problems, make them the hero, make them the center of the story and the journey, articulate those problems, and then you're kind of the hero, that comes in and provides a plan and a solution to that problem, right? You're the white knight. So match that call to action to those needs, and you'll end up ending your story with a really successful payoff.
Okay.
Awesome.
I take that.
Yeah, Eddie pretty much wrapped it up. I had like a small statement, just pretty much like align your marketing efforts, with your customers' pain points and their concerns. And he definitely went into depth with that one. So,
yeah.
I mean, other things that I would think of is, in the course of telling that story, think about what is your value stack, right? Like, not just what are you providing to the consumer that they care about, because again, at the end of the day, they only think about HVAC when their air conditioner is broken. That's the only time they think about their air conditioning. They don't spend a lot of time, worrying about their air conditioner unless it's not working. So what is your value stack? Rebates, extended warranties, maintenance plans, IoT, quality of life stuff. How can you mix that into your core offering, which is, I'm going to come fix your HVAC unit? And how can you do that in a way that kind of sets you apart from your competitors? So this is a little more tactical than like brand storytelling, but I would take those high level concepts that I just laid out, where you make the audience the center of the story, you define their problems and create a solution, and then tie it back to your value stack. And I think at the end of the day, you'll have a really strong brand message.
Beautifully put. So, I'm going to lead us into talking a little bit about marketing automation. You said you wanted to come back to that, so I would like to. But before you can do some cool stuff with marketing automation, one of the things that we got to talk about is your database, because if it's not good, it's not going to work. So let me spin this into a question for you guys. So business owners have a lot of data. How can they take that data and actually use that to create some sort of marketing campaign or strategy that hits the mark?
Well, on the mass media side, focusing primarily on OTT and streaming digital platforms, they can definitely use their first party data to build their custom audience to target. So you take your current database, you clean it, plug it into a system. We can now use like a lookalike audience type tool where you're targeting people in the same neighborhood, you're targeting people with the similar spending habits, similar lifestyles, similar family structure, however you want to play that role. But I know like a lot of people, the biggest question is like, who do I target? Who is my audience? Well, if you have that database, they're right there. You can just plug them in, find a lookalike, and it'll be a better way to, at least you know within the neighborhoods, these are areas you want to service, places that you've already been. The techs have less of a runaround to do because now you have a few neighborhoods and a few counties that you can focus on. And your marketing efforts, the ads will only air in those particular areas, those cities, those zip codes. And you can even get it down to a neighborhood level. If you wanted to focus your connected TV ads in a neighborhood, you could also do that. So that would be a great way to use your own data to help your targeting efforts within your marketing campaign.
In social media, I would say identical, right? Your custom audiences and your lookalike audiences are very powerful. You can connect your field service management tool, like FieldEdge or whatever, via API, direct integration, sometimes Zapier, to these social media channels. It'll pipe in your existing audiences, and then to Michelle's point, lookalike audiences, very powerful. You're using the AI and kind of machine learning capabilities of these platforms, and it's basically, you can define in a lookalike audience. I don't know how exactly it works in some of the media channels that Michelle works with, but in the Meta platforms, social media platforms, you can be like, I want to target a lookalike audience within a 1% variance, within a 5, whatever. And you can play around with that and get different levels of success depending on your service area. And it will look for those attributes that your database has most in common, and then serve ads to people that have similar attributes. And in that way, you can serve ads that are very relevant to people that are likely to do business with you, and cut out the people that aren't likely to do business with you.
That level of targeting is super powerful.
Absolutely.
I know we've talked a lot about like the mechanical contracting side, but I mean, the other half of our company with the service Autopilot side, green industry, it's lawn care, pest control, house cleaning. Yeah. There's other stuff in that. And Michelle, back to your point, right? Like, owning a neighborhood is really powerful for those businesses. You mentioned cutting down on travel time. Well, it doesn't get any better than going to the neighbor. So,
right.
No, those are really, really powerful tools. Are there certain tools for being able to sort of pare down that list and like find those identical candidates and stuff like that? Is that something that's like more in-house with you guys, or are there other tools available for that? What does that look like? Because that's not a realm I'm super familiar with.
Sure.
Well, we would work through a vendor. So we have a vendor that would clean the data, scrub it, remove any kind of things that would violate, the personal privacy laws.
Right.
So the vendor definitely takes care of all of the scrubbing of the data, and then they match the homes typically based on the address with no face, of course, no name, and then from there they'll look for the attributes within third-party data that will lead them to the lookalike homes.
Yeah.
And then the neighborhoods just basically is, zip code, then focus in on that city within that zip code.
Yeah, and then there's also, there are a lot of tools that we use, and you can do it as a managed service, or you can just do it yourself, where you can export all of the email addresses and SMS numbers from your database. You can run it through this tool. It will validate them without sending them a communication. So basically, what it does is it communicates with either the email provider or the, it'll send a server-side signal or whatever, and or the phone carrier, and it will say, hey, is this a valid address? And those email providers and phone carriers will return, a report that says, hey, these email addresses or phones don't really look like they're being used. They look like they're probably going to bounce, if you send an email to them. In the phone case, this may be a burner phone or just a phone that somebody bought a SIM card, and it's loaded up with some minutes and it's dead now. whatever, and help you peel out those invalid addresses, or, hey, this email inbox is full right now, so it'll send that back, because you can get dinged by sending emails, your sender reputation on both of these platforms. If you send emails or SMSs to dead addresses that are going to bounce, or SMS numbers, it'll affect your sender reputation and ultimately will make your deliverability less successful. So those tools can be used, and they can also be used to scrub your database in a way that Michelle was talking about. So like, we do have vendors we work with, we have tools. I personally do a lot of database scrubbing because I work with our own database. So it's an ongoing effort. Your data hygiene is super important at the end of the day, because your personal customer database, the database that your business uses, is probably your most valuable first party asset that you own as a business. It's one of your most valuable owned assets, aside from your website and your business license.
Absolutely. Let's talk about websites a little bit. So websites are sort of like your, well, you guys are the experts, so I'll let you tell me. But like, when I think of a website, right, like that is the core of a website's personality on the internet. So what are, when you guys are working with websites and everything, some of the key ingredients that you guys make sure to put into a website that wows potential customers, or like keeps them coming back, or keeps them top of mind?
Yeah. Your website is your number one owned asset on the as a business. I can say that with a lot of certainty. Arguably your database is just as important, but your website is too. The things I would look at are some of the user experience stuff, like how fast is the website loading? Consumers aren't willing to wait more than like 15 to 20 seconds for a website to load. And if it does all these things where it's like shifting the layout or loading it really slowly, things like that, you're going to lose your consumer before they even take a look at your website. So that it doesn't matter how pretty it is, it doesn't matter how great the imagery and iconography is, it doesn't really matter how fluid the user experience is beyond that, is making sure the website loads quickly and in a mobile environment, because Google has a mobile first index. That'd be the first thing I'd look at, right? Number two is custom photography. Getting custom photography for your brand and for your website is super important. The consumers have seen, 20 plus years now of stock photography on websites, and it really does not differentiate you to use stock photography. So I would invest in custom photography and videos for your website that really speak to your brand voice and your brand image. Clean cut photos of text standing by washed vans and all that stuff. Invest in that. It looks great and reflects well on your brand and differentiates you in your marketplace. So that'd be number two. And that would be the actual user experience, the conversion experience of the website. You want your, the phone number and the schedule an appointment button to be visible at all times as the consumer is scrolling through the website. They basically, should stick to the bottom or the top or the bottom of the screen as a consumer is scrolling. Why? Because you're removing friction. You're making it so that the consumer doesn't have to look for those things, which means that your mousetrap's better than everybody else. You're more likely to get business and win their inquiry when they visit your website. And then other things, to look at the SEO of the website, I would say, making sure that you have easy to read content. Most people have it, in the United States, read at an 8th grade level. That's not to mean that they actually read at an 8th grade level. It means that that's the level they're reading at when they are online, because you do not engage with a website with the same level of intense scrutiny that you would a thick novel. You're looking for answers, you're looking for them quickly. The content needs to be scannable, it needs to be easy to read. So I would consider that if the content is not easily digestible by someone with an 8th grade reading level, your content's going to be less successful. And there's a mountain of data out there that proves that. So I would say those are some pretty big pieces that I would look at in terms of pulling together, a website that looks good and performs great. And then, I look at other things like Google Core Web Vitals and things like that really drive SEO outcomes and make Google happy from a performance standpoint.
Beautiful.
It's simple and concise.
Love that. And if you have a 13, that's how old you are in 8th grade, right? If you have a 13-year-old in the house, you're primed. You're ready to go. Just have them read everything. And if they got it, you're golden.
You don't have that. There's a lot of free readability tools online that you can use to check your content. And I guess when it comes to the 8th grade reading level thing, I wouldn't say that you have to speak simply. You just have to speak clearly, right?
Yes.
So,
yeah.
You can. Ernest Hemingway and Charles Dickens both wrote great novels, but one of the, Charles Dickens would spend, something like 3 pages of content before he got to, a piece of punctuation, right? It's very, very dense, very hard to read. Ernest Hemingway, he wrote lean, tight sentences, probably no more than like 10 to 12 words a sentence pretty often. And his content is just a lot easier to read, and it's a lot more scannable. And that's kind of what you should strive for in terms of your website and the readability of the content on your website.
And there's the Tolkiens, which we're not going to go into.
He would more on the Charles Dickens and for sure.
Yeah. Bringing me back to 8th grade reading. We had to read The Great Gatsby and The Grapes of Wrath and all those books. Oh my gosh. Yeah. A lot of digesting.
All right. So I just looked at the clock. These always go so quickly.
They do.
So let me shoot one question over to you guys. So I want to make sure if it's going to be the last question, I want to make sure it's a good one. So you said it in the beginning, so let's circle back to it. Customer experience is the name of the game. So what are some of the creative ways that you guys have found that you're able to see businesses roll out the red carpet for their clients so that they can have that lasting impression?
This one, Michelle. At the end of the day, the consumer only wants 4 things, right? They want you to pick up the phone. They want the tech to come out to your house, and they want them to be on time. They don't want to feel like they're cheated, and then they want their AC to work. If you're an HVAC provider, right? So, and then arguably there's a 5th, and they want to feel heard, right? So if you're able to remove friction between all 5 of those things I just described, you're going to create a great customer experience. So here are some examples, right? So I just said one of the things that the customer really wants is they want you to pick up the phone. So if nobody's there to pick up the phone on nights and weekends, or they're not there to pick, or your CSRs are at capacity and it's going to a voicemail or whatever, that's not a great customer experience, right? So we have developed with and are working with customers who are using AI voice solutions for their phone systems, right? And so that AI assistant in real time can interact with customers. It can talk to them almost like a real human being can, and it can even schedule an appointment with that consumer. So that creates a better customer experience than maybe dumping them over to like an answering service or something where, somebody's sitting in a call center, they don't know anything about your brand, and that person in the call center might even say like the wrong business name because they're working with 5 other HVAC brands. So that's one way. Another one is, another thing I said is the consumer wants the tech to come out to the house, and they want that tech to be on time. Well, you got to think about it. The customer either is working from home and they're trying to figure out how to fit you in between 3 meetings or whatever, or they took the day off from work or a half day off from work and they're sitting there waiting for your tech to come. Well, so automating notifications, the tech is en route. They'll be here at X time. The tech, is going to be late. They're going to be late by by an hour, whatever. Automating those notifications and using your database to drive those is another great way to create, a frictionless customer experience, right? They don't want to feel cheated. Well, using tools in your sales process and in your evaluation process while you're on site to show them why you're making a recommendation. So if you're doing a service to installation kind of conversion and you're like, hey, look, your air conditioner is 15 years old. I don't even know how it's still working right now. We're going to recommend that you replace it. And here's kind of like, what we have available. And here's why we're recommending this particular piece of equipment. Using technology to facilitate that process on like an iPad or something like that is another great way to create a great consumer experience. And then making sure it works, right? Following up using your marketing automation tool and your touch points to kind of follow up with that consumer and make sure that they're, doing callbacks and things like that. Make sure that their equipment's functioning, that, it didn't like a pipe didn't burst and they don't have like water damage in their wall, whatever. Those kinds of follow-ups are a great way to create, a customer experience that where the customer feels truly at the center of the journey and they feel valued. And then finally, they want to feel heard, right? So monitoring your Google reviews, your Meta reviews, your Yelp reviews, and responding to them in real time, providing, reasonable professional feedback, even if the feedback's negative from the customer. Doing that consistently, there's a way that you can automate that. We even use AI to do that, honestly, where we can help to facilitate those responses. Those are all great ways to align different technology pieces with the customer journey to remove all those friction points.
Beautiful. Yeah, the call center and like the AI voice stuff is getting pretty crazy now. Like we're all in it, and like if we hear it on the phone, like we're like probably like, oh yeah, it's it's that. But like my dad would have no idea.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. And another point to add to that, Eddie, is that like the AI doesn't have bad days, right? The AI doesn't come to work and he's like, God,
yeah, Sure. They don't leave the consumer on hold. We've been running this tool, this piece of technology for quite a while now, and it's like the consumer at the beginning will become aware sometimes that they're talking to an AI person. Some of our clients actually, the message says, hey, we'll get you over to a human representative after you finish this call. Well, they'll schedule a call back or an appointment, and at the end, they'll thank the AI. They'll be like, "Thank you very much," because they'll forget pretty often that they're talking to an AI, even though they're aware. So it's really freaky how easily you fall into that rhythm of human interaction, even when you're talking to voice AI, because it is so able to knowledgeably answer their questions and interact with them and provide feedback. We have people trying to trick the AI. There's a lot of funny recordings of that, but we've got it down to where it'll keep it on track and keep the conversation on track.
Yeah. I'm there with them when they say thank you. You see my like Google Home in the background. If you're listening to this, on Spotify or wherever, I have a Google Home visible in the background. But like my girlfriend will make fun of me because it'll do something and I'll say thank you. And she's like, dude, what are you doing? And I'm like, they're going to take over and I'm going to be spared and it'll be great.
Okay.
All right, Eddie, Michelle, thank you guys so much for coming on here. If people want to learn more about Mediagistic, the services you guys offer, all the awesome stuff that you guys do, what's a good place to find you?
Well, you can find us on any social media platform that exists. We have a presence on all of them. So look up Mediagistic and you should be able to find us, or visit www.mediagistic.com. And that's probably a good way to find us as well.
Beautiful. All right. Well, again, thank you so much for coming on. As we're recording this, Hurricane Helen is on the way. Should dodge all of us. So, thank goodness for that. But do your best, stay dry. And I'm sure we'll have you guys back on at some point. But this is a pleasure every single time. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan.
All right. Later, guys.
Talk soon. Bye.